We're in the book of Habakkuk. We'll be in the book of Habakkuk for 2 more weeks, so don't get too comfortable there. But that's where we are. Habakkuk is a prophet in the Old Testament, tucked in the middle of the minor prophets. So your major prophets are not bigger, as in more important. They're just longer. They said more things. So we have Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Lamentations thrown in there as well as Jeremiah's second writing, in the book of Daniel. Your major prophets, and then you have these kind of like 12, or I think it's 12 minor prophets tucked in after that. And in the middle of that little group is the book of Habakkuk, okay? So Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk. And that's where we are today. It's a book that, unless you've purposely read through the Bible, you may never have spent much or any time in, unless you're like me and you find encouragement from checking books off of the Bible. Right? 3 chapters. I can read a 3-chapter book of the Bible, and now I've read a book. So maybe you're like me, and you've done that as well. I've read the book of Obadiah many times, all 1 chapter of Obadiah, just for that purpose of checking that off my list again. But the book of Habakkuk is a nice book. We started it last week, and the way Habakkuk reads, at least the first 2 sections of Habakkuk, is Habakkuk issuing a complaint or a prayer to God, and then God responding to what Habakkuk says. Okay, so his first complaint that we dealt with last week was, God, why do you allow the wicked to just continue with no judgment? Right? We live in this wicked world, and I'm living in this wicked town of Jerusalem and in Judah, and there's no judgment. It's as if you don't care about the wickedness, God, because you're doing nothing about it. And God's response is, hold on, I've developed judgment for y'all, specially made just for y'all, and it's on its way. And the way it was going to come was, I'm going to raise up a nation that you don't know anything about, called Babylon, the Chaldeans, and they're going to come, and they're going to execute my wrath on y'all. Right? And so God's going to use this other nation who doesn't know anything about the Lord. I'm going to bring them up to bring judgment on the wicked in Judah. I don't know if this brought Habakkuk much joy, right? Because what he wanted was probably more like what we would want, like laser-focused judgment, right? Like, I'm going to judge that person and that person and that person and that person, but not, this group and that group, maybe that one right there, right? We're not shooting with a shotgun. We want a rifle. We don't want just everybody taking it. Let's get focused judgment. And additionally, like, the people that God is using to bring judgment are the wrong people. And so that's Habakkuk's second complaint, which we'll deal with today. If you have your Bible, we're in Habakkuk chapter 1, starting down in verse 12. And we'll read his entire complaint today. Today is actually a lot of Bible that if I read it all out loud, we'd be reading for a good bit. And so I'm going to summarize a little bit in there, and you can go back and read some of that on your own. But we'll read the entire complaint, and then we'll kind of go through God's answer a little bit more abbreviated. But it says in verse 12, "Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the more righteous than he? You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet. So he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower, and I will look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint." This is an interesting response, by the way. I like at the end of his complaint, he's like, I'm going to go stand up there and wait. Or I'm going to go up to my tower, and I'm going to wait for you to answer me, God, and see what you have to say. It's pretty presumptuous, for sure, the way Habakkuk is responding here. His complaint, though, is kind of summarized in verse 13, okay, where he says, "You, Lord, are who are of purer eyes than to see evil and can't look at wrong. Why do you then idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? And so when God said, I'm bringing judgment by way of Babylon and the Chaldeans, Habakkuk was like, I've heard of this country, and they are not good, God. I don't know if you're aware of this. Maybe I'm breaking some news to you right now, Lord, but they are bad people. Not normal bad people. They're exceedingly bad people. Like my neighbors are bad people, God, but these are those people that our neighbors talk about and say, at least I'm not them, right? In prison, like there's a caste system inside a prison, right? And there's people at the bottom of the prison. We're like, oh no, those are the bad people. And it's not the killers, right? It's not the murderers. Like they're not good people, right? It's the child rapists and those people. Even in prison, they're like, those are the bad people. We don't like those people. And so he's sitting in the middle of a wicked place in Judah, and he's like, God, you can't be sending those people to judge us, because those people are a lot worse than us. And he's not wrong. The Babylonians were a wicked pagan nation. They had a multitude of gods, all of which were vengeful, wrathful, corrupted gods. And so it seems so counterintuitive, so against the will of God, that a God who is pure and holy would use something so unrighteous to judge like a relatively corrupt version of Judah. And Judah ostensibly still worshiped the Lord somewhat during this time period. So he's like, Lord, how can this be? Is this really the best judgment you can give, is to send these people who are just like crushing nations? And like, is this the best that you can do, Lord? Why? How could you possibly use them? And this question, God, how could you possibly use them, is probably a question we've asked about a variety of people in a variety of times. Like, Lord, how is this person the right person for this day, for this time, for this year? Lord, how did this person arise to be favored by you? Why him? Why her? Why this group? And so his complaint is something that we can probably echo in some form or fashion. And then God just kind of responds to him. I should probably deal with, there's a couple of little like tricky passages in Habakkuk that I should probably deal with, and this brings up one. In verse 13, he says, look, Lord, you are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong. And some people take this verse to basically mean like, because God is holy, and he is holy, perfect, without sin, other than us in every way, that God can't hear the prayers of sinners, right? That God can't hear the complaints of sinners, that God doesn't even look on the wicked because it would corrupt him, right? That if God would listen to the wicked, that it would corrupt the character of God. And they kind of get around. I'm like, well, how does someone ever become a believer? And they're like, well, the only prayer God can hear is the prayer for salvation. And I'm like, I really feel like we're limiting God. I think what Habakkuk is doing here, though, is saying, God, you are so holy and so righteous, it seems out of character to use someone like this. Like, you're holy, you're good. Like, we're mediocre, and there's a lot of people we choose not to associate with. Right? Like, you choose, if they knocked on your door and they said, hey, I was wondering if I could come to dinner next week, you'd be like, ooh, we're busy. We're busy. We got a thing with a guy, and it's not you. We're busy, right? You're like, well, what's the thing, and who's the guy? And you're like, right, just shut the door. And so I think that's kind of Habakkuk's point. I don't know everything about the divine, but I find it hard to believe that a God who's omniscient and omnipresent, that means he knows everything and he is everywhere, is somehow unable to hear the prayers of the wicked. I don't think that he favors the prayers of the wicked. I don't think God looks, like even when you're living a wicked life, I don't think God delights in answering your prayers when you're living a sinful life, right? But I don't think that God is so other than that he isn't present in the midst of it, right? That there's an idea that God is immanent, that he is present here, sustaining everything that is here. So I think God is around, even around the wicked, though not corrupted by it. So I don't know, that's just a little thing. Some people make a lot of hay out of that. I just want to try to limit the hay that we're making today, okay? All right, so continuing on, What does God say to this complaint? How do you use the wicked, God, to bring judgment on the more righteous? Which, that's a real weird scale, right? More righteous than other people. We do this, don't we? Right? Like, I like to compare myself to other people, and I don't compare myself to better people, as if there was better, right? But I don't compare myself to them. I compare myself to worse people. And it's very easy for me to find worse people because I'm like, well, maybe you haven't heard about this guy named Hitler, right? At least I'm not him. You're like, good job for not exterminating the Jews, Matt. Way to go, right? like, hey, Charles Manson, that's not me. I'm better than him, right? Whatever's going on Dateline 2020 with some guy up in Idaho, I'm not that guy, right? I'm better than him, right? And so we compare ourselves to the wrong people, and maybe our view of righteousness is always just a little bit tainted. But regardless, that's the question. How do you judge with less righteous people, those who are somewhat more righteous? And God kind of gives a little prologue here in verses 2 through 5. But basically, he says in 2 through 5, like, don't worry. Like, I'm just. Judgment will come on the wicked. And so, like Habakkuk, if you view them to be wicked, and I also agree, like, the same justice that's going to come to Jerusalem and Judah, I'm going to come to them. And now I want to skip down to verse 6, though, and deal with what are the woes to the Chaldeans, okay? Because I think there's a lot in here that applies directly to us. What was it that made the nation of Babylon in the ire, draw the ire of the Lord? And he spells it out in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 woes as we look through the end of chapter 2. So verse 6, we're introduced to the first woe to the Chaldeans. He says, shall not all these take up their taunts against him with scoffing and riddles for him to say, woe to him who heaps up what is not his own, and for how long, and loads himself with pledges? Will your debtors not suddenly arise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoil for them, because you plundered many nations, and the remnants of the people will plunder you. For the blood of man and violence to the earth, and to the cities, and all who dwell in them. And so the first thing that Babylon was doing, that the Chaldeans were doing, that was to draw the ire of the Lord and of those around them, was that they were heaping up things that were not their own. Right? And this was kind of the way nations were built back then. You walked into a town, you said, hey, I'd like to own this town. The residents of the town had two options. They could say, I really don't want you to own my town. And then you would destroy them and take their town. Or you say, okay, what does that mean for us? And you say, okay, you have to pay us, $100 a month, and we'll let you live here, and we'll just take money. And if anyone asks, we own this town, okay? So if anybody else comes over and says, hey, I want to own this town, be like, yeah, someone else owns us right now, okay? That's all you have to do. And a lot of towns chose that path. When the big army from Babylon came sweeping in, and they're like, hey, we want your town. They're like, kind of looking at the military might, be like, this sounds like a good deal, right? I went to Prague several years ago. Beautiful city. If you ever get a chance to go to Prague, I advise it. I mean, you will have just an absolute wonderful time. You'll see things that are just like, man, just like you'll stand on a street, and the street's older than anything in our country that's been developed, right? Anything that we can walk on in our country is a street. You'll have buildings older than the oldest established places in America, just like all over, just all around you. It's a crazy, magical place as someone who's like lives in a new world, like America still is the new world in a lot of ways. But the reason that Prague looks so beautiful is because when Hitler rolled up to them, and he's like, hey guys, they're like, all right, we're not fighting. Like, we're not necessarily like pro-Nazi, but we're not letting you bomb our town forever. Whereas if you were to go to like Paris, like it was just bombed and bombed and bombed. And there's old, beautiful things there, but not near as much, right? Because they suffered the ire of war that they fought against. So a lot of places didn't want to get destroyed. They said, sure, Babylon, come on in. We'd love to have you. Others fought, and they got utterly destroyed because the military might that Babylon had was immense. But it's not right to just take other people's stuff. We can agree with that, right? And if you're in the business of taking other people's stuff, you're on the wrong side of God. And so just be aware of that, okay? If you're heaping up things, if you're collecting things that's not yours, that you didn't earn from some special, like right of your own, like if you're just seeing something and say, I want that, and you take it because of power or some like, I don't know, ability that you have to convince people to give you their stuff, stop it, right? Stop it. Woe to you who heaps up what is not his own, because what's going to happen eventually, those people who stuff you took, they're going to rise up. They're going to have their fill. They're going to rise up, and they're going to overthrow your sorry nation. That's kind of the founding story of America, right? Right? We were British. I believe that's the way the story goes, at least mostly. We were mostly British. And then they're like, hey, we want your stuff. And we're like, well, what do we get for you giving you our stuff? And they're like, well, we just want lots of money from you for everything. Just keep giving us money, tax after tax after tax. And we're like, well, do we get anyone over there to say stop taking our stuff? Like, no, not so much. We don't really want to hear about that. I'm like, that doesn't seem fair. And after a few decades of this, we're like, viva la revolution, right? And we're out shooting guns and hiding in the woods and Minutemen and everything. And here we are, the US of A, right? And now we don't care about whatever Queen whoever and Prince Harry. He wrote a book, right? We don't. Some of y'all probably care about that, but we shouldn't, right? Because we're done with them. Well, we threw them off, right? Eventually, if you take people's stuff long enough, they'll get upset, and they'll go, and they'll do stuff. I was right. It was Prince Harry, right? Queen is dead. I'm vaguely aware that the Queen died. I'm not a big monarch person. I believe that we now have a king. Yes, Charles. Long live the king, or whatever. I guess. I don't know. Right? But if you take someone's stuff long enough, they get fed up and they fight back. And God's like, don't worry about the Chaldeans, because the woe is coming. The first woe is kind of practical. The second one goes down to verse 9. It says, woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from reach of harm. You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life, for the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork will respond. And what he says here is look, you saved up all this money, and then you fortified your city. Every other town you walk into, they got a measly wall that you can kick on and it falls over. And you're over here taking all of their stuff and fortifying yourself to build yourself this nest up in the sky that no one can get to. And he's like, it will come to an end. And so if you've used your resources to somehow try to make yourself secure, your security will not last. This is important for Americans today, by the way, who really heap up our stuff, right, that we earn to build our security as if we can be secure by our own means and our own measures. And we look at our 401ks and we look at our retirement accounts and we look at our pension funds and we say, I am secure. And I want you to know, if this year didn't teach you anything else with 10% inflation for a little while there, you're not secure by your finances. If you find your if you find your security in your finances and what you've been able to heap up, you will find that is an unstable foundation, right? This is why we have the Lord, right? Because he's an unshaking foundation. I find my stability in the Lord. Finances are necessary. We need them, but don't look at those and say, I've set myself up on high. I'm secure. Nothing can touch me now, because the price of eggs will triple or quadruple or something, and you will no longer be able to have an omelet in the morning, right? So don't find your security in your finances, guys. Don't find your security in what you're able to do. Woe to him, verse 12, who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. Don't go about doing things by violence, right? There's a violent nature. I was talking with Seth yesterday as we were driving down to Houston to fix a hole in a ceiling at a house that I own. And so we're going there, and somehow brought up America. I don't know, probably because we're not British. We're talking about America instead. And I was like, we're kind of just we're a warrior people. That's how we are. We started, I've already mentioned the revolution, we started kind of in a warrior fashion. That's who we are. We have a large armed forces because that's who we are. It's part of our culture as Americans. We're a warring people. It's not that we're always looking for war, but we're prepared for war anytime someone wants it, right? Since the revolution. If you want war, okay, we're good with it, right? And we spend a lot of money to develop that. But we've got to be careful, right? If violence, and war and violence are not the same thing necessarily, but if we're doing things by violence as individuals, if we let the culture that we were seeped in as kind of this warrior, aggressive culture that we were born into, if we let that seep into our personhood and we say violence is the method for achieving our stated goals, that's a dangerous path to go down, right? And typically it leads to prison, right? That's typically where violence that for our own good leads to. We need to be careful, though, because we're steeped inside of that, and there is a difference, as I said, between being a warrior-like people, as the United States of America has historically been, and being individually violent towards people. But those things that they can brew together in a way that it makes it easier to cross over. You know, people ask about mass shootings. Why are there mass shootings here and not in other places? There's probably 100 different reasons that happens. I think part of it is it's just culturally, we're kind of a violent people. And we're kind of a violent group of people. And so we need to be cautious about that. We need to know that that's in who we are as a background. And we don't need to celebrate that necessarily, right? I'm not saying to reduce our strength militarily, but we need to recognize that there's some downsides to some of the plus sides that America has, right? So that living in this country has. There's some things that we need to be aware. There are natural ditches that we fall into. Verse 15, woe to him who makes his neighbors drink. And that seems weird because that just seems generous, right? Come on over, have a drink. We'll have open bar here today. But it's not just to make them drink. It's to make them drink to the point of getting drunk so that at the end of the verse, in order to gaze at their nakedness, right? To take advantage of people, right? To laugh at people, to abuse people, right? To use some device to abuse people. Obviously, that was part of what they did, right? And what he says is that same cup that you think is going to be used for your good will be used against you. And God's wrath is often pictured as a cup. If you go and read the book of Revelations, you'll see these bowls of wrath being poured out and being stirred up. And there's this imagery in the midst of drinking. That is weird. There's imagery in the midst of drinking that God's wrath is kind of tied up inside of that. I'm not saying that alcohol is a fruit of God's wrath, but I will say be careful with it, right? If you're going to drink, right, do so within some sort of Christian liberty, but don't do so in a way that abuses that, right? If you're going to choose that path, you need to be aware of that. But God's wrath will come on them. Those who abuse that, those who use other people, God's wrath is coming. And then verse 19, it says, woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, and to a silent stone, arise. Can this teach? Behold, it's overlaid with gold and silver, and there's no breath in it at all, but the Lord, he is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. And the final thing, which I think is probably the capstone argument against Babylon, and the capstone argument that we need to watch out for things that bring God's judgment on us, is idolatry. And idolatry is like a thing that we see far away, right? It's someone, I always use a mic stand, they set up a pillar and they say, I'm going to worship this thing. This object. I'm going to make an object. I'm going to set it in my house. I'm going to worship this thing. I'll have a shrine. I'll have candles. Maybe I'll put some food in front of it or burn a little incense in front of it, and I'm going to worship this. And if you go to a Buddhist temple, you'll see this. You'll see them actively worshiping idols. They'll have idols set up, and they'll be giving homage to these idols. But that is not how it works in most Western countries. I would wager almost none of you have ever been tempted to construct something with your hands and to set it up in a place of prominence in your house and to say, that is my God now. Right? We don't do it. It's not in us. It's not part of what we are. But idolatry is the sin of worshiping anything other than that which should be worshiped, which is the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the triune God as revealed in Scripture. Right? That is the only Lord worthy of worship. But worship, as I define it most simply, is anything that you think, oh no, that's not true. Worship is what you set your mind's affection and your heart's devotion towards. The thing that you think about all the time, the thing that you ponder on all the time, the thing that you're rolling around in your head all the time, the thing that you are devoted to in your heart, the thing that gets your passions up when they're challenged. That is something that you worship. And it can be almost anything. The easiest thing for you to worship is another person. If you're married, your spouse. You hold them up on a pedestal, even though you know their failings. You hold them up on a pedestal, and you are fully devoted to them. Everything to them, everything underneath them, whatever they need is in front of anything else. Fully devoted to them. You think about them all the time, right? You are so in love. Love's a wonderful thing. Pro-love, by the way. Very big fan of love and romantic love inside of marriage. Always have been. But it is dangerous because your devotion for that person can supersede your devotion for the Lord. And you're putting their needs and their desires and their wants over what God has commanded you to do. You say, well, like in our kids, let's use our kids for an example, because this is pretty easy as well. We like to hold our kids up. We love them. We think about them. We spend all of our money on them, right? So we have our kids, and we're fully devoted to them. And it's an easy shift to take the Lord from our number one spot and slot him down at number two and to slide the kids into the number one spot. And so instead of spending time in the Word, you're like, well, we got to go and we got to hit another bucket of balls, right? We got to go and we got to go and do this trip for this, select whatever team. And everyone's on a select something team. Your kids are all very special. That's why they were selected, I assume, to be on that thing. Or maybe, I'm just spitballing here, maybe there's a market for select team coaches to make money off of your children. I don't know. I'm not here to break the whole thing down for you, but maybe there's a lot more select teams than kids who are really select. Okay, but your kids are special, and that's facts. So don't your kid personally, they're the one. But it's easy, right? And they just slide into that spot, and the things of the Lord go underneath, right? We're like, well, yes, I would give to the church. I would give generously to the church, but like my kids, like I've got to pay travel bill. My wife, she deserves a vacation. Well, no, what your wife deserves is death and hell, right? That's what your wife deserves, not mine. Mine is perfect, and please don't tell her anything different, right? But it's easy for us to worship a person, right? And we look at this person, and we begin, and we expect them to respond like God, like to fill the hole that God is only able to fill. Stuff can fill that hole, right? There are people who are so devoted to a thing, a hobby or an activity. Sports, for some people, can fill that hole. I had a good sports year, right? My baseball team won the World Series. My college football team got destroyed in the championship game, but none of your teams were playing. So, I feel like that's a win, right, for me. Right? My pro football team, I don't even think I have one anymore. So, go Cowboys, like I've been saying all year. Right? Like I had a pretty good sports year. It's easy to get sucked into it, and you get sucked into the emotion of it, and you think about it, and you read about it, and your heart's on it. And then when something goes bad, you get mad about it. Politics. Oh, politics, the American Idol. Right? We love them. And we side up, and it's you and me, and we're tribes, and we're against each other. And I hate that guy. Why do you hate that guy? He wears the wrong color shirt. Well, if I changed the shirt color of this guy and I just read out what he said publicly, would you like him anymore? No, but he's wearing the right color shirt. Go blue shirt, go red shirt. And when someone challenges it, when you hear something about it, you get mad. Right? There's no agree to disagree in politics anymore, right? Because the other side is the devil. I mean, they're the devil. They're both the devil, guys. They both are the devil. They're both awful, terrible, no good. Except for a county judge, apparently, who's not here today, but I should probably not defame Bill. Individuals are great. There's great people in the systems. I have no doubts about that. There's wonderful representatives, wonderful senators, wonderful people throughout the whole systems. And some of you know these people personally. You have a relationship with them individually. But the systems are both evil. It's just power and control, and we look at it, and when it's challenged on either side, we get angry because someone has pricked at the idol in our hearts. Guys, we've got to be careful about that. We've got to keep them in the right position. It's not to care about it, because you should. If you're a citizen of this country, you should care about what happens to this country. And as we vote, so goes our nation, so you need to participate. But if your participation on your political world is dramatically greater than your participation in the spiritual realm that the Lord has bought your soul with the cost of his Son for, you got it wrong. And I've been there. Like, I've had it wrong before. Like, join me on the people who've got it wrong. Come join me on the other side now. I'm taking everyone off when you talk about it. Like we've got to do better. Because the Babylonians, they worshiped things, just wooden stones, and speak, idol, give me stuff. Man, we worship people and systems. And God will not tolerate being second among his people. And the same woes that were given to the Chaldeans, the same judgment that was given to Babylon, is coming for us. We're not immune to that because, we're on the right side of the Lord. You know, we worship, we sing, we hear his word, we pray sometimes, we try. But look, if you're an idolater who's trying to keep God just kind of in your life, just somewhere tucked into your top 10 priority list there, the Lord is somewhere on that list, he will not tolerate that. Judgment will come. And so I'm asking you today, I'm pleading with you today, stop. Identify what it is that has your heart's affection, your mind's devotion. What is that thing? Is it your spouse? Is it your kids? If it was taken away from you today that you would be utterly and completely wrecked by, is it a hobby? Is it your political tribe that you've associated with? What is it that has displaced the Lord from the position that he rightfully should have in your life? And what have you put in his place? And then I'm going to ask you to put that thing in its proper place, not to throw it away. Right? Like if your spouse has moved up to the number one place in your life, I'm not saying like divorce your spouse and kick them out and I'm never going to talk to this person again because they made me sin. They didn't make you sin, you did it. Put them in the right spot though. They'll be healthier there as well because you'll be treating them in the appropriate amount of attention. So do the work. I can't do it for you. I can't identify it for you. I don't know your soul well enough. But what is it that gets your blood boiling, your passions going? What is it that occupies your time when you're on your phone? What are you reading about nonstop? What circles are you just diving deeper into? There's a good chance that thing has slid into an idol in your life. Not certain. I won't tell you I know this 100%. There's a good chance that thing has slid into that spot. And if that has, today's the day to repent. Turn around and go the other way. Confess to the Lord that you have been keeping him second or third or fifth or 158th on your priority list. Right? Acknowledge that what God did on the cross through Jesus Christ, he would die for your sins, is worthy of him maintaining the top position in your life for all time. And place him firmly there. And then when something else creeps back up 6 months from now or 6 minutes from now, push him back down. Let the Lord hold the spot that the Lord has bought and earned in the life of the believer. We will be healthier. I will be healthier if we keep things in the proper place. There's a place for your spouse. There's a place for your politics. There's a place for your sports team. Right? There's a place for your children. But when you get them out of order, everything goes to pot. Judgment will come, right? Habakkuk's question, Lord, how can the unrighteous do this? God's answer, don't worry, judgment's coming for them, but I want you to know if judgment's coming for them for their unrighteousness, it's coming for you in your unrighteousness as well. Let's live a holy life, leaving the Lord at his position at the top. Let me pray.